Fascism isn't just coming, it's already here. So what, if anything, can you do about it?
The mainstream media reports a rise of the far right in Europe. They talk about the Holocaust and Germany's newly elected AfD, telling us that they are the fascists and that they are a threat to our democracy.
But he's a fascist. For decades, this has been a favorite smear of the left aimed at those on the right.
I know he's not a fascist, but it's more just of getting the community together to just go against.
Every Republican president, for that matter, virtually every Republican, since the 1970s has been called a fascist, now more than ever.
A lot of people said he's not actually a fascist, so then why call him a fascist?
Well, I don't know the exact definition of a fascist, so I don't know if he is or isn't a fascist.
Here's what you would have seen if you had Googled fascism in 2015, a form of radical authoritarian nationalism. The definition goes on to say that fascism originated in Italy during World War I, combining more typically right-wing positions with elements of left-wing politics in opposition to liberalism, Marxism, and traditional conservatism. Although fascism is often placed on the far right within the traditional left-right spectrum, several academics have said that the description is inadequate.
This label is based on the idea that fascism is a phenomenon of the political right. The left says it is, and some self-styled white supremacists and neo-Nazis embrace the label. But are they correct? To answer this question, we have to ask what fascism really means. What is its underlying ideology? Where does it even come from? These are not easy questions to answer. German fascists in the 1930s were called Nazis, basically a contraction of the term National Socialist.
National Socialism is not the same as fascism. Fascism is something else. And the media, and even the mainstream historians, do not know what fascism is. So the question then becomes, if the fascists are not racists, what is the idea behind fascism? What does it actually stand for? Well, in this video, I'm going to clearly explain the idea behind it, because it turns out that fascism is, in fact, a religion. Some of them will deny that, but it is, and there's ample proof of that.
We know the name of the philosopher of capitalism, Adam Smith. We know the name of the philosopher of Marxism, Karl Marx. But who's the philosopher of fascism? Yes, exactly. You don't know. Don't feel bad, almost no one knows. This is not because he doesn't exist, but because historians, most of whom are on the political left, had to erase him from history in order to avoid confronting fascism's actual beliefs.
In 1943, the following directive was issued from party headquarters to all communists in the United States. It read, "When certain obstructionists become too irritating, label them after suitable build-ups as fascist or Nazi or anti-Semitic, and use the prestige of anti-fascist and tolerance organizations to discredit them."
So let me introduce him to you. His name is Giovanni Gentile. Born in 1875, he was one of the world's most influential philosophers in the first half of the 20th century.
And I absolutely need to point this out. Actual idealists believe that your mind creates reality. Your mind, your consciousness, creates your physical, material body. Racism, therefore, doesn't make sense to an actual idealist. The material world is an illusion created by your mind. It's your mind that matters, not your body. So even if your material body is bad, then all you need to do is convert your mind over to the good side, and you're good. Actual idealism fundamentally rejects materialism and determinism, making racism impossible. As one of Giovanni Gentile's students said, "All human beings deserve our respect, if only because they are human and carry, as we do, the mark of divine creation." So this is why the original Italian fascists, including Mussolini and Giovanni Gentile, were not racists, at least until the late 1930s when Hitler came along. Mussolini had a Jewish mistress for 27 years, Margherita Sarfatti. There were 10,000 Jews in the Fascist Party of Italy. There was no mention of racism in the Doctrine of Fascism written by Gentile and signed by Mussolini. And in 1937, Gentile even wrote a piece saying that German anti-Semitism was a monstrous barbarism that was inappropriate to civilized society. Before the late 1930s, Mussolini had never betrayed any evidence of anti-Semitism. Until that time, in fact, fascist Italy had provided more refuge for Jews fleeing National Socialism than almost any other nation. Mussolini had not written an Italian Mein Kampf. He had no master plan, nor did he believe in a master race or detest the Jews. In Hitler's eyes, if you are born Jewish, you're Jewish. There's nothing you can do about that. You have the magic Jewish blood, and therefore you're bad. For the Italian fascists, the original fascists, with their actual idealism, the mind creates reality. So if you are Jewish, you can change your mind. That is the fundamental difference between fascism and National Socialism. National Socialism requires racism. It's built into the ideology at a fundamental philosophical level. In the original fascism, biological racism is not there at all. It may contain a religious anti-Semitism towards the end, although it was anti-Catholic too, because it wants everyone to convert to fascism, which is a religion in and of itself, but it's not biological racism. These exemptions were a clear reflection of why the fascists objected to the Jews. What counted was spirit, not race. Fascist anti-Semitism was, therefore, akin to the hatred of the infidel, of non-believers. But a Jew could embrace the fascist faith, convert to fascism if he so chose.
If one is passionate and committed in the noble pursuit of excellence within their chosen field, then I would say one has a moral obligation and an ethical duty to be of service and to always strive to be part of the solution and not the problem. After all, it's a world that our children will inherit. That's worth being a part of. That speaks to me. Passion, action, noble intention creates progress. Passion creates progress.
Gentile believed that there were two diametrically opposed types of democracy. One is liberal democracy, such as that of the United States, which Gentile dismisses as individualistic, too centered on liberty and personal rights, and therefore selfish. The other, the one Gentile recommends, is true democracy, in which individuals willingly subordinate themselves to the state. Gentile wanted to create a community that resembles the family, a community where we are all in this together. It's easy to see the attraction of this idea. For Gentile, all private action should be oriented to serve society. There's no distinction between the private interest and the public interest. Correctly understood, the two are identical. And who is the administrative arm of society? It's none other than the state. Consequently, to submit to society is to submit to the state, not just in economic matters, but in all matters.
The state is us. We are the state. I mean, you can't get more democratic than that, can you? So Gentile says, the fascist state is a democratic state par excellence. And it is. If we're all connected spiritually, then the state is us and we are the state. It doesn't represent us, it is us. It's direct democracy. So if you're sitting there saying, well, you're a Democrat and you're for democracy, fascism is the ultimate form of democracy. And you might say, no, but fascism is a threat to our democracy. No, it is democracy.
Was another Italian, Benito Mussolini, the fascist dictator of Italy from 1922 to 1943, who turned Gentile's words into action. In his Dottrina del Fascismo, one of the doctrinal statements of early fascism, Mussolini wrote, "All is in the state, and nothing human exists or has value outside the state." He was merely paraphrasing Gentile.
So let's bring this all together now. The original Italian fascism was not only democratic, it was real democracy. And it wasn't biologically racist either. The reason why was because its philosophy, actual idealism, developed by Giovanni Gentile, said that man is a spiritual, communal being who shapes reality in his mind. And I know for a fact that the vast majority of the people watching this believe in democracy, believe that a man is a communal being, believe that the strong state should intervene in the market on behalf of society, and that a consciousness of some kind has created reality.
The Italian philosopher is now lost in obscurity, but his philosophy could not be more relevant.
And that's the reason why the mainstream media and the Marxists and the liberal elite don't want you to know what fascism is, because you're totally exposed to it.
Actually start to see this definition begin to change in early 2016. They take out any mention of left-wing politics, and also, did they say conservative? Because they actually meant anarchist. And of course, here's what you'd see today if you Googled it. Aren't you glad they clarified?
It is for the people, by the people, because it is the people. It is not conservative, it is revolutionary. It is nationalism and socialism. And a fascio was a trade union in Italy. So the word fascism itself means trade unionism, syndicalism. And fascism is defined as the totalitarian, cooperative, and ethical state. The final collectivist synthesis of nationalism, syndicalism, and actualism. And that is a vitally important distinction. Thus, fascism and National Socialism are not the same. They are two fundamentally different ideologies. One is biologically racist, the other is not. And they only get lumped together partly because of the language barrier, not as many people could speak Italian as German, and mostly because of Marxist and Soviet propaganda. That is the reason why you're not allowed to know what fascism really is, because it's competing on the same ground as Marxism. And by the way, it is illegal in the United Kingdom to be hostile to a religion. And so, because fascism and National Socialism are religions, I cannot offer ill will, spite, contempt, prejudice, unfriendliness, antagonism, resentment, or dislike towards fascists or National Socialists. Therefore, I will be merely sticking to facts and disagreeing with them on an intellectual level.